to ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Thank you, Madam President. Councillor Baker. Yeah. Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Siomo.
Present.
You are a present. Edwards. It's Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, please excuse me. It's all his fault. Councillor Asabi George.
Hello.
Councillor
Thank you.
Flaherty.
Good to see you.
Councillor Flynn. Councillor Garrison. Councillor Janey. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Wu. And Councillor Zachem. Madam President, we have a quorum.
Oh, thank you so much. I was hugging my colleague and thanking her. So I'm informed by the clerk that a quorum is present at this time. If all councilors and guests could please rise. As our lovely clerk leads us in the invocation, I ask that everyone remain standing as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, dear. We gather once again to do God's work, the work of peace. May we seek to renew a right spirit within our own souls and a right spirit among our sisters and brothers gathered here today, so that we may carry the Spirit of God of peace into the world, to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. Reaching inward, we prepare our hearts to be at peace, to work with our colleagues in peace, and to bring peace to the world. We hear the words of our teachers echoing the understanding and wisdom of our many spiritual traditions. And so now, as we turn to our work at this meeting, mindful of our cosmic companionship, let us pray with action for peace in the nations and in the cities. May this be a reflection of the peace that resides in each of our hearts. May our greatest passion be compassion and our greatest strength be love. So may it be. Amen. Shalom. Salam. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And before we get into the regular order of business, I just want to acknowledge we have a congressman from Haiti who is standing in the back, Congressman Jerry Chardot with his mom. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for the work that you do on behalf of not just your country, but also the Haitian population in the city of Boston, including District 4 and 5. So thank you so much. All right, moving right along to approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes are so approved. Madam Clerk, moving on to reports of public officers and others.
Docket number 0607, communication was received from the Boston Retirement Board regarding FY20 retiree cost of living adjustments known as COLA base vote.
Docket 0607 will be placed on file. Moving on to reports of committees.
Docket number 0310, the Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on February 6, 2019, docket number 0310, petition for a special law regarding an act concerning the retirement classification for Boston School police officers, submits a report recommending the home rule petition ought to pass.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0310 is a home rule petition that seeks to amend state law to place Boston School police officers into the Group 2 classification for retirement purposes. The home rule would amend Section 3 of Chapter 32 of the Mass General Laws. Currently, Boston School Police officers are classified in the Group 1 system, which consists of officials and general employees, including clerical and administrative workers. The matter was sponsored by our colleague, City Council Frank Baker. The committee held a public hearing on Thursday, March the 28th. At the hearing, we heard testimony from the administration via Porrick Leiden, the attorney and general counsel, as well as Tim Smith, executive director, both from the Boston Retirement Board. They offered testimony and provided background information regarding group classifications. We also heard from the Boston School Police about the history of the department, their in-depth training, and their day-to-day responsibilities. Based on that information gathered at the hearing about the minimal cost impact and the vital role that our Boston School Police officers play in maintaining security at all of our Boston public schools, as Chair of the Committee on Government Operations, I recommend that docket 0310 pass, and through the Chair would like to give our lead sponsor an opportunity if he has any additional comments to make. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the hearing. We had a hearing on docket 0310 last week and heard from representatives from the Boston School Police and Boston Retirement Board. I thank you for my colleagues that joined the hearing. This home rule petition will amend the Massachusetts General Law to specifically add Boston police officers to Group 2 retirement classification. Currently, Boston school officers fall under Group 1, which is consistently mainly of clerical and administrative workers. The Boston School Police are licensed under BPD Rule 400A as special officers. They have the power to make arrests, preserve order, and enforce the laws of the Commonwealth. Boston School Police carry handcuffs, mace, and are trained by the Boston Police Department, the National Association of School Resources Officers, and a complete Boston Special Officers Training Academy, prior to being assigned to one of our middle or high school campuses. Additionally, Boston School Police are certified first responders and successfully complete National Incident Management Systems emergency management courses. School police officers provide a much-needed school-based community policing and work very closely with BPD, MBTA, Crimes Against Children, Juvenile Court and Probation, and the Department of Youth Services, aiding departments in solving and preventing crimes. Over the last 30 years, the Boston School Police have confiscated thousands of dangerous weapons in our school. Some have endured assault and battery while working in our schools. Our school police are our on-site first responders responsible for providing a safe environment for students to learn, prevent intruders and/or tragedy. In the wake of several shootings on the campuses across our country, I think it's time to take a serious look at how we are classifying our trained police officers. There are currently 79 school police officers. Their average is 49 years old, and their average years of service is 16. The estimated cost of moving these officers from Group 1 to Group 2 would increase the July 2010 normal cost, retirement cost, our cost on the city to $65,000, and the actuarial accrued liability by $1,272,000 based on a 5-year remaining on the funding schedule and leveled amortization payments. You getting all this? In the fiscal year of 2021, appropriation would increase by $375,000. The numbers aren't mine. I believe they deserve to be included in Group 2 among many of their peers in law enforcement. Basically, what this will do is if you reach your maximum at 65 years, this will bring that maximum for just these officers to 60. So they can get a, based on your when you retire, 65 would get us, someone like myself, 2.5, you times it times their years. This now would give them that 2.5 at 60 instead of, having to stay to their 60. A lot of the guys, probably men and women around my age, the thought of rolling around on the street or the sidewalk with an 18-year-old kid, the shoulders, the arms, everything. I think that these guys are doing a good job, and we should pass this, send it over to the mayor for him to sign, and then up to the State House. So, and this is a refile. I filed it about 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure, but I plan on working up the State House also. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say thank you to Councilor Baker for his leadership on this important issue. As a probation officer for 10 years and as a former teacher, substitute teacher in the school system, I saw the tremendous work our school police played in the city of Boston in our schools. They're very professional. They're hardworking, they're highly trained, but they're also great ambassadors to our city and to our students and to the school department as well. I hope to work closely with Councilor Baker as well with lobbying efforts up at the State House. These school police officers really deserve this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? No. At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who is Chair of the Committee on Government Operations, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0310. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0310 has been passed.
Madam President, can I call the vote, please?
Yes, Councilor Baker. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo. Yes. Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Yes. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George. Yes. Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty. Yes. Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn. Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Garrison. Yes. Counselor Garrison, yes. Counselor Janey. Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley. Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Wu. Yes. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem. Yes. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0310 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0310 has been passed. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action. Madam Clerk, if we could read dockets 0501 and 0502 together.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Docket number 0501, message and order approving a supplemental appropriation for the Library Department for FY19 in the amount of $732,604 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association, known as PSA. The terms of the contract are October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2017, and October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of January of each fiscal year, and a new step starting in 2019, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on March 11th, 2019. And docket number 0502, message in order to reduce the FY19 appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $732,604 to provide funding for the Library Department for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association, known as PSA.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0501 concerning an appropriation for collective bargaining agreement between the City of Boston and the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association. There are approximately 160 members in this bargaining unit, mostly librarians, but also assistant managers, communications staff, and other employees providing professional library services. The agreement consists of 2 consecutive agreements extending from October 2016 through September 2020, with an estimated cost of $2.6 million over that 4-year period. Language items for this contract include entitlement to the city's paid parental leave benefit, moves to electronic pay stubs and biweekly pay, limiting the right to advance grievance to arbitration and a promotional bypass, and centralizing the compensation grade appeal process to the city's Office of Human Resources. This is consistent with all of the other agreements with the city and our bargaining units. 2% wage increase effective in January of each year of the contract, creation of a new highest step, and elimination of a current lower step. A one-time lump sum payment of $250 for all employees effective March 2019, increases in compensation for those with second job-related master's degrees. The wage increase pattern, compensation, and language items are consistent with the previously approved agreements. The committee held its hearing on these dockets Monday, April 1st. We had Justin Sterrett from Director of Labor Relations, Anne Marie Noonan, and the BPL Chief Financial Officer, Ellen Donahue, testified on behalf of the administration. The supplemental appropriation will be $732,604. Following approval of this appropriation, there will be approximately $15.2 million remaining in the collective bargaining reserve, so I recommend passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? At this time, Councilor Siomo, who's chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of dockets 0501 and 0502. I will take them separately. For docket 0501, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0501 has been passed. For docket 0502, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0502 has been passed.
Docket number 0197, order for hearing regarding the implementation of policy requiring all Boston Public Schools to have a full-time nurse and social emotional support specialists.
Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This Monday, I held a hearing regarding the implementation of a policy requiring the minimum of one full-time nurse and a social emotional support specialist, counselor, social worker, school psychologist in all of our Boston Public Schools. I'd like to thank Councilors Janey, Flynn, and O'Malley for attending and participating in this important discussion. The hearing had two panels present to gain information. The one from the Boston Public Schools included Margaret Van Cleve Rocchio, who's the Senior Director of Health Services, Andrea Amador, Senior Director of Behavioral Health Services, Jill Carter, Interim Assistant Superintendent for Selwell, and Dr. Charles Granson, Chief Academic Officer of Boston Public Schools. After their presentation, we addressed some concerns with BPS health and wellness policies, including professionals having to spend more time on evaluations instead of providing direct support services to our students, insufficient resources to address adverse childhood experiences and the impact of trauma and violence, streamlining access to parents' portals, to the parental portal, lack of language and cultural diversity among our service providers, and the inadequacy of having part-time nurses in 44 of our schools. Throughout this panel, it was clear that although we've been able to identify student needs, there hasn't been enough progress in improving access to services. In addition to increasing staffing, there is a great need to prioritize providers with cultural diversity, language, ethnic, and racial diversity. Last year, Boston Public Schools and the administration invested an additional $2.3 million for nurses, school psychologists, and social workers. On the nursing piece, this brought all of our schools to a minimum of at least a 0.5 nurse. In those 44 schools now where we have 0.5 nurses, some of those schools did have a 0.6 or a 0.7 at some point. But to mitigate the schools that had less than a 0.5 nurse, we raised some up and brought some down. We do need additional nurses to make all of these 0.5s in all of these 44 schools full-time nurses. I asked what it would take during this hearing financially to implement a full-time nurse in all of our schools. We estimate that it costs approximately $97,000 per school nurse. That would be an investment of approximately $2.2 million. Unfortunately, in this the school's budget that was recently passed by the school committee, there was no mention of additional investments for FY20. I look forward during our upcoming budget season to advocate for this funding and those additional nursing hours in all of our schools. During the second panel, we were joined by providers, a BPS pupil adjustment counselor Lucinda Mills, a Boston Public Schools nurse Jonathan Hayes, as well as Dr. Jenny Gormley, who's the president of the Mass School Nursing Association. In Boston, we categorize 76% of our students as high needs, and the experience of these panelists shed light on the long-term impact of inadequate providers to support the mental and physical health of our students. In addition to traveling back and forth between 2 different buildings, our nurses with 2 school assignments have to adapt to 2 school communities, keep 2 separate caseloads for their morning and afternoon schools, and have the burden of asking themselves, am I in the wrong building at the wrong time at this time every single day? As a former teacher at East Boston High School, I have seen our nurse actually save lives. I strongly believe that access to a full-time school nurse is fundamental to creating a safe learning environment. Having a full-time nurse in every school should not have to be a line item I look for in our budget. It should be a standard operating non-negotiable requirement. It's insufficient that social emotional support specialists, we have social workers and school psychologists that cover up to, each one of them, cover up to 20 schools in our district. There needs to be a licensed and trained professional in each of our schools, not only for the social, mental, and emotional wellness of our students, but to allow our teachers to focus on teaching instead of duly acting as therapists, counselors, social workers, and nurses. I ask that this remain in committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Docket 0197 will remain in the Committee on Education. Madam Clerk, if we could, actually, before these lovely folks walk out of the City Council chamber, I did want to quickly acknowledge guests of Councilor Wu. These are students from Bryant University who came to see us in action today, led by their 2 professors, Liz Bornstein and Andrea Boggio. Perfect. So thank you guys for coming today. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if we could read docket 0211 and 0314 together.
Docket number 0211, message in order for the approval of a home rule petition to the General Court entitled Petition for a Special Law Regarding an Act Relative to Voting Precincts in the City of Boston. And docket number 0314, ordinance requiring the review of precincts in the City of Boston.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We held a joint hearing yesterday on docket 0211, which is a home rule petition that would allow the city to establish sub-precincts in order to alleviate crowds and lines in some parts of the city that have experienced significant growth. None of these adjustments will change any ward boundary lines. They will also not change representation for the purposes of congressional, representative, senatorial, or council districts. The matter was sponsored by our Mayor, Martin J. Walsh, and during the hearing, we heard testimony from Commissioner Dion Irish, Head Registrar Sabino Piemonte, and Larry DeCaro, former City Council President, and Ian Kerr, Policy and Communications Manager from Mass Vote, as well as members of the public. The committee heard testimony in favor of the proposal, as well as testimony about the need for more community engagement and outreach around these changes, and the urgent need for larger and more comprehensive precinct review in the city. That was led by our colleagues, Councilor Ed Flynn and Councilor Kim Janey. With respect to docket 0314, that's an ordinance requiring review of precincts in the City of Boston that was sponsored by both yourself, Madam President, and our colleague, City Councilor Michelle Wu. That proposed ordinance seeks to amend Chapter 2 of the City Code by adding the appropriate committee to the City Council to conduct a review of city precincts every 5 years. We heard testimony from Commissioner Dion Irish, Head Registrar Sabino Piemonte, Larry DeCara, as well as Ian Kerr as well. And we also additionally made note of the request through the lead sponsor, technical amendments such as adding language to include the election commissioner and the elections department within the final report. As a result of the information and feedback gathered, I recommend that docket 0211 and docket 0314 remain in committee so we can issue a full committee report and put all the sum and substance of yesterday's hearing into something that we could put before the floor in the next week or 2 for a vote. And through the chair, if either of the lead sponsors would like to speak, I'll defer as well. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you for holding a timely hearing. Docket 0211 and 0314 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0199, order for hearing regarding independent education plans in the Boston Public Schools.
Counselor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, once again. Last night, I chaired a 4-hour, powerful and important hearing on individualized education plans in the Boston Public Schools. I would like to note on the original hearing order, there was a typo. We reference them as independent, and they are individualized. I'd like to thank Counselor O'Malley and Flynn for attending, as well as Counselor Janey. She stayed for the duration of this hearing, and I think we got quite a bit out of public testimony. We were also joined, as part of our panel, members of the Boston Public Schools Office of Special Education, as well as Dr. Charles Granson, Chief Academic Officer. They provided a presentation on their IEP management process, professional development for school-based education coordinators, IEP district responsibilities, their policy for conducting IEP meetings, the process for transition planning, and inclusionary classroom policy. They have an awesome responsibility for our kids and their families. After their presentation, we addressed concerns regarding the lack of inclusion seats to meet the needs of implementing full inclusion, insufficient support staff to provide services required in an IEP, delays in wait time for IEP services, restrictions to private school students, and cases where IEPs have been modified or changed to ensure that we're not out of compliance. We were also joined by Carolyn Kane, who's the chair of Boston SpedPAC, Diane Lasinskis, who is a secretary and 10-year board member of the Boston SpedPAC. We also had testimony from, to kick off public testimony, from Melanie Allen, who is a BTU teacher and a mother of a son with special needs. I want to highlight for us that we heard public testimony that lasted well over 2 hours, and that included testimony from parents, teachers, education activists, and special education professionals and teachers. I want to recognize and credit that within our district, there are thousands of kids who are getting the services they need, want, and should get. My own son, who has a 504, receives wonderful supports from his school, and I want to make sure that we make note of the great things that are happening in the district. Unfortunately, during the period of testimony, we heard very personal experiences about the IEP experience, about the receiving or not receiving of IEP services, and it was in direct opposition to what the district presented, and certainly instances that appear very much out of compliance. Last night, we heard from parents about the overwhelming barriers in the IEP process. As a parent, as a city councilor, as a former teacher, it was shocking to hear that parents were being denied services required in their child's IEP. As one of our panelists said last night, budget constraints outweigh good intentions every year. Families have had a difficult time understanding and navigating the IEP process. It is especially difficult for families whose first language is not English, and therefore they are not able to adequately advocate for their child. If, as a district, we are serious about full inclusion, then we have to ensure that we are providing enough seats, staffing, and support. It is unacceptable that our families are waitlisted for long periods of time. Some families decide to leave the system and the city itself. The stories we heard from teachers shared that were similarly concerning, specifically at the Umana School. As a district, we need to do better in putting the child first and providing wraparound services to ensure that our children are succeeding. We need to be exceeding the standard and going beyond the minimum. I ask that this remain in committee.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Anyone else? Okay. Docket 0199 will remain in the Committee on Education. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0608, Councilors Zachem and O'Malley offer the following resolution supporting Massachusetts Senate Bill number 683, an act establishing Medicare for all in Massachusetts.
Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank my good colleague, Councilor O'Malley, for joining on this. Once again, this is not the first time this body has considered the issue of Medicare for all, nor hopefully will be lending its support to this bill as has happened in the past. And I want to also make sure to thank my constituent in Mission Hill, Catherine DeLaurie, who is here, who has been an activist and organizer on this issue. I know she and her colleagues have reached out to many of you in your offices about the importance of making sure we're doing everything we can to address healthcare needs, reforming our healthcare system here in Massachusetts. We earlier today, thanks to Councilor Baker, had a presentation from the Boston Medical Center, our safety net hospital in the Boston area, where we heard about some of the gaps in coverage, in care, and resources for people. And I think as we look over data over and over again from across the state and even across the country, we see a need for reform like this. And I'm proud to say that Massachusetts is a leader when it comes to health insurance and health coverage already, but there's more we can do. And I think this bill that's up in the Senate right now would be an important step forward. I would ask my colleagues to suspend and adopt this resolution, as we do so many other times when we lend our voice to these important issues up at the State House. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First off, I too want to commend and thank my dear colleague and friend, the District Council from District 8 from Back Bay, for once again introducing this important resolution that will really discuss one of the civil rights issues of our time. Debates around healthcare affordability and access go back more than 100 years, and Massachusetts and Boston have often led the way in advancement for healthcare justice. Despite the advances we've made, losing the public option in the Affordable Care Act was one of the great tragedies of the last decade. While the vast majority of Massachusetts residents have health insurance, healthcare costs continue to rise unsustainably. And in fact, the number of children who are uninsured has been rising over last year. The cost, the heartbreak they create for families has a toll that we feel in every neighborhood, in every city and town across the Commonwealth. And an unregulated private healthcare system can lead to these unsustainable costs. We know that we need to look at different directions. While single-payer healthcare is often seen as a left-wing issue, my experience on the council has been that many liberal causes can have a conservative dimension as well. You've often heard me say that every fiscal conservative ought to be an environmentalist. Similarly, the Bostonians most negatively affected by our profit-driven healthcare system are our small business owners and entrepreneurs. When private healthcare is so much more expensive than Medicare and Medicaid, small businesses that don't have that bargaining power of many employees will often pay the price. When our residents feel tied to a job and unable to strike out on their own because of the cost of health insurance, our economy suffers. I know any version of single-payer health care will be a very heavy lift. We understand that it's unlikely to happen this year, but I believe that if we continue to raise the unsustainable issues that plague our current system, our city and our Commonwealth will find a way forward once again. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Wu, as well as the Chair. At this time, Councilor Zakhem and Councilor O'Malley seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0608. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0608 has been adopted.
Docket number 0609, Councilors Flaherty and Flynn offer the following order for hearing regarding the retirement age of Boston police officers.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
This is a refile from the end of last year. We're presenting basically an exploratory opportunity to take a look at the mandatory retirement age of Boston police officers for our city's department. As we all know, it's mandatory at age 65. I'd like to take the opportunity to evaluate how many officers are approaching retirement age. I'm hearing that number is between 300 and 400 over the next 18 months to 2 years. The total cost to the city, as well as the experience impact and what guidelines can be considered to increase the retirement age. 2019 to 65 makes sense, many of whom are running marathons, et cetera. Could we talk about maybe 67? Could we talk about maybe 68, 69? I know our police officers do a phenomenal job. They undergo significant training throughout their careers. As our police officers progress through their careers, they gain valuable field experience, familiarity with our neighborhoods, and nurture relationships within the community. It's a big part of our community policing success. And you think about sort of Randall Hallstad being sort of the night commander, 39 years on the job. He wanted to continue to work. but couldn't. And we have one that's approaching real soon. I know Madam Clerk will know Detective Jimmy Wise, probably one of our best detectives in the city. Same thing, he's approaching 65. He doesn't want to go, but they're forcing them to go. So, and then there's going to be other folks that we know, a guy that I know in my neighborhood, Jack Lone, and even others that were ready to go, just based on their years of service to the city. So I just want to see if we could have some flexibility. Look forward to having a conversation with our commissioner and with our BPPA, with our detectives union and our superior officers to see what they have. And I think it'll be a mixed reaction. There are some that will just be ready to go. They've paid their dues in service and they just want to retire and become snowbirds, et cetera. Then there's others that have tremendous more that they want to do for our department. And I don't think we should be handcuffed, to lack of a better word, in losing that talent for our city. So look forward to an expedited hearing and look forward to working with my colleague and co-sponsor Ed Flynn and obviously the Chair of Public Safety as well to see if we can get a hearing pretty quick to see if this makes some sense for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just want to echo what Councilor Flaherty said, is the police officers that are in their 60s or 65, they have a lot more to offer our city. They have great experience, great education. They love Boston. They love the neighborhoods. They love the people. They still want to contribute. And when we have someone that's able to meet the physical requirements and all other requirements of the job, let's give them an opportunity to continue serving the people of Boston. They love this city, and they feel like they're able to continue to make a meaningful and significant contribution to the people of Boston, and I think we should at least consider giving them the opportunity to do that. Thank you, Madam President, and I just want to say thank you to Councilor Flaherty for his leadership on this important issue.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to say, just going on the record, I do have some mixed emotions about this, and I'm looking forward to the conversation to have. It could be because I'm further away from 65 than some other folks, and so as a result, I may be biased in my understanding. So I'll acknowledge that. That might be feeding my understanding. But there's also, I think, just part of this conversation, the police resources and personnel in general, that we need to have a conversation about. You know, we're trying to fill police detail, and maybe it's my ignorance. I thought we were actually using retired police officers to come back and actually do with the traffic and detail positions. I thought that was happening. So I actually thought that when they reached a certain age, we were still going back to them to bring them back. So I look forward to this conversation, how we can use them, how we can help fill those positions. I know for a fact we're paying, or they're trying to pay even for details in Charlestown right now. The casino's willing to pay 4 positions on a daily basis to move folks through Sullivan Square, and they are not filled. And so they went to the sheriff's office, and now they're going to the MBTA. So I look forward to really just in general talking about how we most efficiently use our police personnel, also with the issue of recruitment and getting people to come in and fill those positions as well. So thank you so much for your leadership. I look forward to this conversation. Yes, I'm in here, please.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards' name, as well as Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, as well as the Chair. Docket 0609 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Let's see. I am informed by the clerk that there are 0 late file matters. Anyone wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Nope, moving right along. I am informed by the clerk that there is 1 late file matter, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the late file matter is added. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. Any announcements? Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to announce we're hosting the lunch today. We have Brazilian food from East Boston, which I think is going to be very, very flavorful, and our guest speaker is Roca, so a huge, proponent and working in our court system with a lot of our youth. So I invite you all to come to the lunch today.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to wish our city clerk, yesterday was her birthday. I think she was 33, you were, Maureen?
I'm telling you, nobody.
I didn't even,
33.
you were hiding that, I
And,
didn't even know
and
that.
acknowledge her on her work and her commitment to the city. It's people like Maureen that have made this city what we have now. So thank you, Maureen, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Councilor Baker. And happy birthday to our great clerk. Anyone else have any more announcements? All right, this time I would like all guests to please rise, and staff as well, and councilors, of course, as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor Flaherty and Flynn, Margaret King. For Councilor Janey and the Chair, Ermias Azadone, Nipsey Hussle. For Councilor Siomo, Robert Green, Donna Marie Creel. For Councilor O'Malley, as well as the entire council, former Boston City Councilor Tom Keene's wife, Lori Farrell. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber on Wednesday, April 10th at 12 noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.